So here we go. Welcome to the walkthrough from Comprehensive Maths for the Edexcel Higher paper. As you can see, it's the summer of 2017 and it's the third and final paper. So calcs at the ready. So to begin with, pretty bog standard. Pretty bog standard Venn diagrams. All I'd say is take your time, look at how many marks it's worth, and you want to get off to a strong start. Do not lose. You don't want to come out of this with 5 out of 6. Take your time. So it says working with odd numbers less than 30. I would say just count through them. So we start at 1. 1's in neither list. And off you go. 3 is in, best stick an A and a B on there. 3 is in that list. 5 is in B. 7 doesn't appear. What we got? 9 appears in A. 11 in neither. 13, nope. 15, both. What we got? 17, neither. Just looking ahead. 19, neither. 21, just in A. What have we done there? 23 in neither list. 25, that's in the B list. 27, that's in the A list. That was meant to be a 9, wasn't it? And I was saying A. Yeah, there we go. And the 29 doesn't appear anywhere. Probability of A union B, so you count them all up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 7 of them out of 15 of them. And I made that harder than it should have been. Number 2, pretty standard simultaneous equations. Probably the easiest kind if we're honest, because you don't have to double or treble them, because the x's are already the same. They have a 3 next to them. They're both positive, same sign, subtract. So 1y minus 4y gives us 5 of them. And negative 4 minus 6 is negative 10. So our value of y, divide both sides by 5. I get minus 2. Pick either equation. I'm going to pick the top one because it avoids negatives. So 3x plus whatever y is. I say it avoids negatives. It's just that minus times a minus. That's really what I meant. Add 2 to both sides. And divide both sides by 3. So x gives us negative 2/3. Y gives us negative 2. On we go. So median dress size, which one's in the middle? So it's only worth 1 mark, but it's worth doing properly. For median, you're best off working out your cumulative frequency. So up to and including dress size 8, there are 2 women. Up to 10, add them on, there's 11. But most importantly, that does not include the 13th woman. The 13th woman will be somewhere in the dress size of 12. She'll be about 3rd person in. But who cares? It's 12. Then you've got all this lot of waffle, usual 2 lines for a usual easy 1 mark. Don't overcomplicate. Is Zoe correct? No. All right, because obviously it is possible for a woman to have a shoe size of 7 and a dress size of 14. So any words to the effect that someone could be in both categories, or even if you want to be posh, they're not mutually exclusive. Any words to that effect gets that easy mark. Number 4, easy, but don't let them put you off. Don't let them overcomplicate a very simple principle. There's V, B, L, and C cakes. 2/7 of. In maths, of means times. So get on your calc, 420 times 2/7. There's 120 V cakes. 35% of means times, percent means out of 100. 420 times that means there are 147 B cakes. So how many L and C are there? 420 minus 120 minus 147. There's 153 of the other kind, which are in the ratio of 4 to 5. Work out the number of lemon cakes. Well, L is 4 out of 9 of the other 153 cakes. And there we go. It turns out quite simple, but boy, do they try to overcomplicate. Number 5, several ways of going about this. You could go internal angles, you could go external angles. I've given my model answers. If you go to my website, I've got the model answers all lovely handwritten out there. Here, I'm just explaining how you go about them. So first of all, I'd mention about the square. That's a 90 right there. Now you could go about the fact in here that that's going to be 90 as well. So let's look at this little angle here. Well, if it's a 12-sided polygon, 360, that's the sum of the external angles of all regular polygons, divided by the number of sides, we get 30. In other words, that internal angle here is 120. So, if you want to think about it, what do we know about a hexagon? A hexagon has 6 sides. What do its internal angles add up to? So you do n minus 2 times by 180. So 4 lots of 180. You've got your 720. If you divide that by how many internal angles there are, hey presto, 120. So you could go about that in lots of different ways. You could go external angles of the 12-sided polygon. That's how I actually did it. In my other one, you get 150 for the internal angle, so you get 30 for external. Who cares which way you go about it, as long as you get that it must have 6 sides, or it has got 120. At the end of the day, make it detailed. Don't go over the top, but do go at least a little bit in detail. As I say, check out my model answers if you want to see how I went about it. On we go. Number 6. Density, mass, volume shouldn't be complicated, but again, boy, have they done their best. The way I go about it is, as you can tell, they've given you density and they've given you volume. So you're obviously wanting to work out the mass. So just do one thing at a time. Apple juice. Mass is 1.05 times by 25. What about the fruit syrup? The mass is 1.4 times by 15. And the carbonated water mass is 280 times 0.99. Get on your calcs for 26.25, 21 and 277.2. But when you're looking for the density of the drink overall, you're looking for the overall mass. Because what we need to do for the drink density, we need total mass, which is them added up, 324.45 divided by total volume that was given, 320. To 2 decimal places, I got 1.0139, in other words, 1.01 for the density. So just slightly heavier than the density of water, which is 1. Number 7, as bog standard as SOHCAHTOA as you could hope for. So labels, we've got the hypotenuse, we want the opposite, the adjacent is useless. This is a SOH question, and if you want the opposite, it's a times. So on your calc, sine of 23, do close your brackets if you've got smart Alec calculator that opens them for you, as long as your calculator ends up spitting out 5.8609, in other words 5.86. As long as your calc gives that, it does it the way you want it to. Number 8, I drew a diagram for this. It's one of those, if you can picture it, great. If you can't, and don't draw an accurate diagram, no one cares. Who cares? I've just messed that up. No one cares. So area of the circle. Now, area of the circle is pi r squared. So in other words, the radius of the circle is 49 divided by pi, the whole lot, square rooted. I got 3.949 and so on. Now, it says work out the value of x, the side length of the square. So that's x. So that's x. Now that is not 3.949. That's the radius. It needs doubling. And doubling we get 7.898 and so on. So it becomes a hidden Pythagoras question, because we can say that x squared plus x squared, because the two sides are the same, it's an isosceles triangle, equals the hypotenuse squared. So in other words, there's 2 of them. So what do we need to do to find x? Take your 7.898 squared, divide it by 2, and then square root your answer. 3 sig figs, what did I get? 5.585, which rounds off to 5.59. Onwards for me cheating. So number 9, I've got to be honest, it's easy. You don't need me to talk through it. Just make sure you pay attention to the scale, that each square is 20, so each half a square is 10. But I've drawn it already because all the information is given. In other words, I've done part B already. But let's do part A, work out the interquartile range for male. I get 330 for the upper quartile, 150 for the lower, so 180 for the whole, for the interquartile range. I won't skip on to part C. Part C simply says our old friend. What does this say? Make a comparison. Chris says the box plot shows that the females spent more than the males. Is Chris correct? So you can see the median for the females. We already knew it was 300. What's the median for the males? It's 250. Use those. I know it's only worth 1 mark, but make that statement nice and clear. Female, male. There we go. So 300 is greater than 250. You can make the statement, on average, the females did indeed, all right, spend more money. Job done. Move on. Here we've got a typical question, except we don't know the percentage multiplier. So the idea is, there's the capital. I won't call the multiplier x because x is being used for the percentage. I'll just use a y. And it would be y to the power of 5 equals the outgoing value. Well, we can divide both sides by 6,000, can't we? I get 1.338225. And your final step, well, I say final bit on your calc, is do the fifth root. Hopefully you know how to use the nth root button or the block on the root button. Do the fifth root of all that nonsense, and I get 1.059999 and so on. So when we look at the percentage, it's that end bit, don't forget, because when we're doing an increase, 5% would have a multiplier 1.05. So it's a bit above 5.0%. So you can simply call it 5.99. Doesn't say how accurate. Do it as accurate as you want. 5.99, 5, and so on. 6.0. Who really cares? Number 11. Jeff and his shrubs. So Jeff says there's 215. So there's your connection. When you do 215 divided by 17, you get 12.6. You can't have 12.6 of a rose tree. So now you make the argument, this is not an integer. This is not a number of rose trees. So Jeff cannot be correct. And on you go. I thought number 12 was quite a weird one until I was thinking about how best to explain it. Do the best way? Draw a line. There's A. B, don't care exactly where it is. Same with C. Same with D, but we'll put D at the end. So the idea is that A to B is worth 1 when B to D is worth 5. Then A to C, that, is worth 7 when C to D is worth 11. Now, I've not made that a great scale, but who cares? So notice the 7 and the 11 mean that A to D is 18. The 1 plus 5 means that A to D is only worth 6. We don't want it to be worth 6. It must be an equivalent amount. So we're going to treble them. So we treble the 1, so A to B becomes 3. We treble the 5, so that B to D becomes 15. So now the entire distance, A to D, is worth 18. We can now make a solid comparison. We can say that if we look, it wants A to B writing first. Well, A to B is 3. It wants B to C next. Now, B to C, we don't quite have. Let's move on. What about C to D? Well, C to D is easy. We already had it. How on earth do we find out B to C? Well, B to C, if we take away the 11 on the right-hand side, take away the 3 on the left-hand side, the middle bit must be worth 4. Job done, move on. Number 13, one of them inequalities sort of back to front. So the easy lines, the first line, always write down the equation of the lines first for me before you go to inequalities. This bottom line, y equals -2. Then we've got the other two lines, doesn't matter which one you go for. I'm going to go for this one. So it crosses at +1. What's its gradient? Well, when it goes along 2, there, it goes up 1. It only goes up 1 for every 2. So its gradient is a half. Now we look at the other one, a little bit more straightforward. It goes through the origin. So it's y equals mx, no need for a plus c. And as you can see, along 2 up 2, it is just a y equals x line. So let's write down the 3 inequalities. So as you can see, it's above the y equals x line. I'll write them up here. So it's y is greater than or equal to x. It's above, so the height needs to be above, so it's greater than or equal to -2. And again, when you look at this final line, it's that side, it's below the line. So y is less than or equal to the half x equation. On we go. Number 14, you know these are coming. Factorise the top, factorise the bottom. Hope a lot of stuff cancels out. Always factorise the easier bit first, because it gives you a clue as to what works out on the bottom. So when you factorise the bottom, 2 is prime, and you know that the x has to pair up with a 4. The only question is it a +4 or a -4? And the answer is it must be a minus, so it takes you into the minuses. And what pairs up? +3. So bosh, they cancel, and you're done. It's x plus 4 over 2x plus 3. There we go. Part B, make V the subject. Well, as you can see, there are 2 bits with V in it, so you're going to need to factorise. So I'm going to multiply both sides by V while expanding the brackets. I will isolate the V's by adding 30V to both sides. And I'll do what I've just said. Take a V out. And you're pretty much there, because to get V equals, just divide by your brackets. You don't need the brackets, but there we go. Next. Question 15. People get put off by these because they start looking and go, well, I thought it was trigonometry, but I'm used to having numbers. Well, so what? If you see letters where you normally expect numbers, so what? Get on with it. If you think it's sine, cosine, whatever, get on with it and see what happens. The clue, area. Because we've got a formula for the area, we can say that the area equals a half A. Don't matter about labels. You might forget A and B the wrong way around. A half AB sine C. So I'll take that back, because don't forget, I'm trying to save a bit of room, because writing with this electronic pen is like writing with a jumbo crayon. Sine 45 is basically √2 over 2. All right, that's all it is. So get rid. And I'll get rid of the half and the half by timesing by 4. And now I can just expand these brackets in peace. So 2x squared minus 3 on the end, and in the middle 6x take away x is 5x. Now I can subtract 24 from both sides. And by the way, it's already given us a clue. We're about to get a quadratic, minus 27. And when it wants it to three significant figures, of course you could complete the square if you really want to. But quadratic formula for me all day long. So x equals minus 5 plus or minus. So b squared is 25 minus 4ac will give us a positive. So it's 4 times 2 times 27 all over 2a. Now let's just deal with the negative. If you press minus 5 minus all that over 4, you get a fairly large negative, which needs rejecting. Because although it might make that positive, the fact is, if x is like minus 1, that would still be a negative. And you can't have a negative length. So you reject any negative answers in this context. We only care about the positive solution. And I get 2.63. On we go. Number 16, iteration. Don't forget, folks, use the ANS button on your calculator and it will save you a heck of a lot of time. So to get the first, so minus 2, take away 4 over the minus 2.5 squared. Stick that in your calc. You get a pretty normal looking minus 2.64. It won't be so normal on the next ones. By the way, always have your brackets here, particularly when you are subbing in and you're replacing it with a negative squared. So if you are going to use the ANS button, press ANS squared on your calc. If you don't know how to use the ANS button, look it up or don't bother. It's entirely up to you. You can just write it out and type it back in. It's not a problem. So minus 2.64 squared. And when I stick that in my calc, minus 2.57392 and so on. And finally, yes, do it all again. Minus 2.573, and I can't be bothered with the rest. And you get minus 2.603 and a load. That's meant to be a 0. And a load more nonsense after it. Now, it doesn't ask you for how accurate they want it, so I just went with 2 decimal places. So minus 2.64 minus 2.57 and minus 2.60. Part B, explain the relationship. So you could simply say out loud that these and the original one, the other one you were given, they are 2 forms of the same equation. Or if you wanted to just show it by doing the following, divide everything by x squared, you get x plus 2 plus 4 over x squared, and then take away the 2 from both sides, take away the 4 over x squared, and as you can see, so you can argue they are 2 different forms of the same equation, but then it is worth 2 marks. So also add in that iteration estimates solutions or solution. All right, iteration is a way of getting an estimate of a solution. Any words to that effect will pick up the 2nd mark. Number 17, I quite like bounds as long as you stick to the technique, which is as soon as you read the top sentence, you can see 110 to the nearest 5. So it's half of 5 is 2.5. So it's 112.5 and 107.5. The track is 270 to the nearest 10. So up by 5. Whoops, brains turn to gibberish. To 265. Could the average speed of the train be above? So in other words, you're looking for as fast as possible. We want the train to be as quick as we can. That means upper bound. And the upper bound would mean the greatest value. So we need the biggest possible distance, because by the way, it's a DST question, even though it's more bounds. We need the biggest distance possible on top divided by the lowest, all right, the lowest time possible, which is 107.5. Don't forget though, that's in minutes, and it is asking about kilometers per hour. So whether you do it now or later, no one cares. You do need to times it by 60. So the upper bound for the speed is 153.49 kilometers per hour. In other words, no chance. Could the average speed be greater than 160? No, because that's the max. Using those numbers, that is the maximum we can get. Jake's assumption was wrong. The track was actually measured to the nearest 5. Well, nothing wrong with thinking about the question again. So this 270 could have been as high as 272.5. Okay, so that means we would have used 272.5 up there, which means our upper bound would have become smaller. If you aren't sure why, do the calculation again. But 272.5 divided by 107.5 times 60 would simply mean that the maximum would be lower. So I would simply say that we are using a lower value for distance, and so the maximum would actually reduce. All words to that effect, but again, don't over waffle. It's only worth 1 mark. Number 18. So, work out the length of the arc. Now let's do this logically. To work out the length of any arc, you need the radius. Well, we've got it. But you need the angle. So that's the angle we want. Problem though, we haven't got it. Where can we get it from? Well, let's delete that and let's go, well, if we knew that one, we could double it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Why can we double it? Because these are congruent triangles. It's not a proof question. Don't need to prove they're congruent. The fact is, that's right angle. Because tangent and radius meet, they've got a 5 and a shared line. So side, side, side. All right, they are congruent triangles. If it was a proof question, you'd have to go down that argument, but not here. So this distance is 9. This distance is 5. Yes, folks, it is just hidden SOHCAHTOA. So we've got the hypotenuse. It's 9. From the angle, we don't want the opposite. Opposite's not bothered. We have got the adjacent. So I'll call that X. We want an angle, so it's inverse, and it's a cos, because we don't need the opposite. So it's inverse cos of adjacent over hypotenuse. I get 56.25. In other words, the angle we are wanting for arc ABC the angle we are wanting is 360 minus 2 of them. That's what will give us that angle around there. And I get 247.5. You've now got enough. Length of the arc means you do length of the perimeter of a circle. In other words, circumference of a circle. So arc ABC, is 2 times pi times the radius of 5 times by the angle we're working with out of 360. It wants answer to 3 sig figs. I get 21.598, or in other words, 21.6. Next. Number 19, easy if you practice them. So get it factorised or use the formula, even complete the square. No one cares how you find your critical values, just find them. But with these being small numbers, it is a very easy one to factorise. Do not write x equals. That's not what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is, on a number line, -2 is one important number. Positive 1/2 is another important number. And it's a quadratic. So ultimately, that sentence is saying, where is the quadratic above the 0? It's that way and that way. So we want to be less than -2 or greater than 1/2. And finally, I have cheated. It's not the worst way to end the paper. So y equals the exponential. So whether it's y equals 2 to the x, 3 to the x, or e to the x, no one cares. Because where does it intersect the y-axis? Another name for the y-axis is x equals 0. And anything to the power of 0 is 1. Nice. On we go. Yes, I've cheated. Yes, I'm giving it away, but ultimately it's not the worst question in the world. But whenever you see an equation for a circle, your job is to think, where's the centre? In this case, 0, 0. And what's the radius? Square root of 16 is 4. Now, if you want to move something, all right, it's moving 3 to the right. So its centre is not going to be at 0, 3. We need to move it horizontally, or in other words, add 3 to the x value. It says any points of intersection with the x-axis, so don't worry about the y-axis. We don't care. It's this we need and that. And they're easy if you know what the radius is. Add 4, subtract 4, and you are done. So the last couple of questions there weren't the hardest. It was the ones prior to that that were a bit worse. But not a bad paper, I thought, overall. As you can see, my time, what is it? Under 40 minutes. Not bad. All right, it's usually over 40 where we have the tricky papers. Anyway, hope that's helped. That's 2017 done and dusted. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.